All right, well, it is 9 a.m. and it looks like we are all here. So I will call the meeting to order.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, we are going to start with introductions. I am Nancy Wise, Benton County Commissioner and Chair.
Pat Malone, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Good morning, Zan Ojiro, Commissioner.
Good morning, Joe Kirby, County Administrator.
Vance Corney, County Council.
Jeff Van Arsdal, Benton County Sheriff.
Danielle Brown, Benton County Behavioral Health Deputy Director.
Erica Milo, Board Recorder.
Laurel Byer, County Engineer, Public Works.
Shiana Steingass, Environmental Project Coordinator, Public Works.
All right, we can move on to announcements. Are there any announcements? Hearing none, we will review and approve the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. All right, that brings us to our work session. And first up, we have the 1-year update from the Sheriff's Office with Sheriff Jeffrey Van Arsdal. Before we get into his report, the board would like to quickly acknowledge Sheriff Van Arsdal. And I believe that somebody left something for you, Sheriff, is that correct? So don't open it yet. There we go. So Sheriff Van Arsdal, the Board of Commissioners would like to recognize you and the fact that this month marks your 1-year anniversary of being sworn in as the Benton County Sheriff, which is an honor we believe you take seriously. The mission of the Benton County Sheriff's Office is to provide professional public safety services with integrity and accountability. When you came on board, you made your motto clear: polite, professional, and prepared. The Board of Commissioners acknowledges that you embody these characteristics, and we appreciate the leadership that you demonstrate every day. We appreciate the relationships you have built with us and others. You have been a breath of fresh air. We appreciate you and thank you for your service. And now I'll open it up to my fellow commissioners for any comments they would like to add. Commissioner Malone and then Commissioner Ojiro.
Yeah, Sheriff, I really appreciate how you hit the ground running and your engagement, whether it was the county levy last year or the pie eating contest that you need some practice. I assume you have been practicing. So third place, come on. Engaging in the community and putting a face to the sheriff's office. I really appreciate your efforts and looking forward to year 2. So thank you.
I too want to add my thanks and looking forward to a long and productive working relationship. And what I wanted to comment on in particular was the relationships that have been strengthened greatly in the communities of Monroe and at Air Village and around the rest of the county, and the great presence of our deputies in all corners of the county. And secondly, your work in the arena of law enforcement and behavioral health, working very closely with Captain Devaney and his team at the jail on pretrial services and on post, on the exit end of adults in custody leaving the jail, and working very closely with the Justice Systems Improvement Program to ensure that we really are focused on programs as well as facilities. You are everywhere and you are contributing in a significant way, and really appreciate having you as a team member. It's fantastic. Thank you.
And would anyone else like to make a comment? Joe?
Commissioner Wise, I would just like to jump in and thank the sheriff for his engagement. That is one of the primary words that come to my mind when I think about the sheriff's service over the last year. He has been so engaged in so many different ways, and that has been a really, really important aspect over the course of the last year, trying to bring the sheriff's office and the county closer together in many, many ways. And so, Sheriff, thank you for your engagement. It has made a difference and will make a difference going forward.
All right, so now it's time for the sheriff to open his gift that the Board of Commissioners got for him.
I'm not gonna lie, this is a bit embarrassing.
We were counting on that.
That was the idea, Sheriff.
100%.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. Okay, so first off, it's a very nice coffee cup that says when I was my date of hire, which is very nice. But more appropriately, and I'm sure my son will appreciate these, is the golf balls with my face on them. Oh, that's awesome. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Very kind.
You are welcome.
Too funny. Well, I guess with that, I can start into my 1 year review. I know I was slotted for 15 minutes. It looks like I have about 8 minutes left. So we'll just kind of burn through this. First of all, it's an honor and a privilege. You 1 year ago trusted me to take the keys to the kingdom and run with it. And I hope that I have fulfilled the obligations, requirements, the expectations you had of me. I ask that you don't lower the bar. We have a lot of work to do. And so moving forward, I mean, nothing changes. And so I really do appreciate that. When you appointed me, I talked about relationships for primary and everything else is secondary. And I mean that. And I will continue to do that. That relationships are important. Somebody else is going to sit here, right, eventually. So we have to make sure that we've got good established relationships and that, you know, what you see is what you get. We're transparent and we're consistent. We have to be from this office, not just for you three, but for the entire Benton County community. I think that should be the expectation. First thing I did when I got here, I had conservators of the peace put on the back of all of our marked patrol vehicles. And I explained to the patrol staff that we aren't creators of chaos. So that's basically what that means. We are conservators of the peace. The definition of conservators of the peace is an officer of the government authorized by law to act in such a manner that will preserve and maintain the order and safety. That's the basic layer of what law enforcement is. We have to preserve order and safety. And if somebody calls 911 and wants a deputy, they get a deputy. That's it, plain and simple. We have to be able to be there and take care of our community. We all live in this community, so it's a group effort. A lot of folks get confused and think that the sheriff's office has 3 divisions: patrol, parole and probation, and jail. And we do have those 3, but we also have a civil division, search and rescue division, emergency management falls under this office. We have accreditation and policy, finance, hiring, and training. So there's a lot of moving parts and pieces in the sheriff's office, and that breaks down to 32 patrol staff members, 26 jail staff, and that's full-time and on-calls. And we like to have more on-calls, and we're working on that. Plus, we have a nurse in the jail full-time, and we have 1 deputy that runs our work crew out of the jail. We have 16 folks in parole and probation. That includes the parole and probation deputies, the case monitors that are interns, and the support staff in the front office. We have 11 reserve deputies attached to the patrol division. We have 1 search and rescue special services coordinator, and I just brought on a new person to replace a retiring person in that position, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. But through that, we have about 150 volunteers in search and rescue that covers Corvallis Mountain Rescue, which is an amazing group, Mary's Peak Search and Rescue. We have SkySAR. We have volunteers that have airplanes available to Benton County and regionally as well as across the Northwest. They've gone as far north as Canada in the last year to help with things. We have ARES, which is essentially our amateur radio operators, and then Region 3 Canine Search and Rescue as well. And when we did the implosion up here at Reser, the next day we were able to get our Canine Search and Rescue folks into the rubble to do some training, and it was very realistic and lifelike, and they thought that was amazing. And then we also have a critical response team. It's a group of volunteer mental health professionals or whatnot that can go out as a group and address large-scale issues. Most recently, we had a triple fatal traffic crash in South County, and we activated the CRT, and they went and met with the Monroe Fire Department staff who responded to that crash. And then, of course, I have a very robust Sheriff's Office posse. I had to cap it at 22 members because there were so many folks that wanted to participate in the posse, right? And it's amazing. I went to the posse conference earlier this month, or I guess it was late last month, in Eagle Crest, and the amount of folks there that just support this office, but support, you know, the 36 offices across the state was really impressive because they're all volunteers. And I'm a horse owner, and I know what expense goes into that. And I was beaming with pride with our members there. That was awesome. Well, of course, we have two folks in the emergency management office. I have an accreditation person that's going to be coming on board here shortly. I have a financial analyst in-house that I think we all know how important she is to this office, with the biennial budget being over $40 million, plus contracts and grant monies and whatnot. Don Dale is incredibly important to this office. And then I also have a training and a hiring sergeant, Leslie Philberg. And I call Leslie my Swiss Army knife. She does a little bit of everything. And if it wasn't for Leslie, I would be in a bad way. And then, of course, I have Katie Cooper as an executive assistant. She keeps me lined out and organized so that I can tend to the relationships and make sure that I am getting out there. We talked about some achievements. Commissioner hit it right out. When I got here running, the local option levy was the front brain. And so I reached out to our union, CPOA's union, the dispatchers union, and said, this impacts all of us. And I went door to door along with several unions, and I feel like we did a good job. And I was really pleased with how that came out. Over 70+% approval. It was just amazing. It goes to show that there is a great deal of support in this community for law enforcement, along with some of the other key partners who were a part of that option levy. We got the budget approved. As part of that approval was $700,000 carved out for Polk County so we could rent some beds. I promised you as of July 1, when that contract went into place, I'd have 10 people in Polk County Jail, and I've kept 10 people in the Polk County Jail the entire time. And that's no easy feat sometimes, because Sheriff Garton, while he's being kind, I want to make sure that he's getting the best of our AIC so that it doesn't create an additional workload for him. The Monroe service contract, when I was sworn in, I learned the Junction City Police Department was providing law enforcement services to a community in our county, and I took offense to that. And I went to work, and I am proud to say we are now, of course, the service provider on that contract in South County to Monroe. We've got an established substation in Monroe with new signage on Highway 99, and it's been amazing to be back, and it's just been great. The folks in Monroe love our office. Our office loves going down there. So that's a great source of pride for me. The same with Adair Village, where I've been working with Pat Hare, the city manager in Adair, and Bill Curry, the mayor. We have the equipment. We're trying to identify a spot for a substation in Adair. It looks like maybe City Hall is going to be our landing spot. I haven't been pushing that, but the deputies want to have a spot up there because they spend quite a bit of time in Adair. And so I'd like to at least have them a place, provide them a place in the community where they can get out of the weather, go type, and have the lights on and be available to BS. Like we touched about the relationship building. I got here, I didn't know anything about anything, right? I've never been a sheriff before. And so I reached out to Chief Rubin in Philomath and said, can we get together? And that's what turned into Chief Rubin, myself, Chief Hurley, Chief Anderson, the new chief at OSU, Chief Harnden at APD, Benton County Law Enforcement, and we get together and have coffee every Wednesday and just talk about what's going on with our organizations in the county, anything that might pop up. And that's really lended itself to having great relationships when a major crime or an incident happens and asking for resources and help. We have that relationship now, so it makes it a lot easier to have an understanding when they ask for help. They really, really need the help. It also helped us establish a relationship with OSU and with Chief Anderson. I have a drug recognition expert trainer in the office, and he's providing all the DUI and drugs that impair driving training to the OSU staff now. It's one way where we can share some resources that we have. And I'm awful proud of Sergeant Drongenson on that one. JSIP, we touched on the JSIP. I got here after the LOL and budget. The next thing was JSIP and the Justice System Improvement Program. And it's been really eye-opening for me to participate in, because I've always, just been law enforcement, jail, parole and probation, but now over here you get the other side of it. And we get to create this cool whole new system that's going to be responsive to our county. And as the sheriff's office lead, I can say, I want to look at that. I want to look at this. I want to do these things. And as a result, some stuff has come out of that. We have pretrial release currently. And we also have a reentry form that I'm really proud of, because the reentry form came as a result of meetings like this, where somebody simply asked, I think it was Johan, who simply asked, do we ask them where they go? Gosh, we've never done that in the millions of years of existence. We've never asked where they go. So now that's turned into a release entry questionnaire. And then we met with some of the key stakeholders in the community, and now we ask those questions, and it's worked out for us. If we've got unhoused AICs that we're kicking out, we're able to find them housing now and get them, in touch with the VA or mental health or get a driver's license or whatever it might be. Those questions are being asked now, and that was a result of the JSIP and just meeting and talking and listening. We have been reaccredited. Our 3-year accreditation came through, which was no small feat, and I go back to the Swiss Army knife that is Leslie. Our accreditation and policy manager had to leave the office, and she left at a pretty inopportune time. And so it kind of fell towards Sergeant Thilberg. And Leslie hit a home run. The executive director of the Oregon Accreditation Alliance in his email to me said, and this is a direct quote, there were no files lacking proofs of compliance, and therefore no files were returned for additional information. In the last 6 years, I believe I've only seen this one other time. Leslie did a great job, and I just couldn't be happier and prouder of somebody that I've known. We've known each other our entire careers here, and so I was pretty proud of her for that. Recently, we passed our on-site jail inspection through OSSA, Oregon State Sheriff's Association. They had a 3-member team come on site, look at all our policies and procedures. There's over 300 that they look at. It's essentially an accreditation process as well. There's a couple of questions they had on a couple of things. Otherwise, we passed with flying colors again on that, so that was awesome. We increased our drone capacity. We utilized the drones for so it's a liability issue for me, not having drones in my previous organization, coming here and seeing that we can utilize the FLIR in conjunction with a patrol team and a canine team and whatnot, and really reduce the risk of injury to the individual we're looking for, plus the law enforcement side. It's just an amazing tool. And then on top of it, we use it for diagramming major crimes, traffic crashes, homicides, officer-involved shootings. We can utilize that and then create a 3D rendering with an amazing picture. We made an initial investment on the front end of this earlier last year and purchased some new equipment, and it's paid off, and it really is, it's a harm reduction tool, in my opinion. It's amazing. And then we also worked as Overwatch when they did the implosion on Reeser Stadium with the drones. And if you go on our Facebook page, there's actually a heat. We used FLIR, and you can see the discharges exploding and whatnot in the FLIR. It was pretty cool. Recently, I determined that we were not operationally prepared for certain things, and I was able to go before the CIP committee and get funds approved to purchase a side-by-side. So we are operationally ready, both from a from a search and rescue function, emergency management function, and a patrol function, to be able to respond to situations that we wouldn't otherwise be able to. Examples being, when we find lost hikers and they have to walk out, and if they're injured, then we have to pack out. Now we'll be able to possibly drive in and get them out in a more timely manner. If there's snow on the peak, this side-by-side will have tracks. We'll be able to get up there without relying on the community's direct assistance. There's just a ton of great things that can come out of the purchase of the side-by-side. Earlier, we put AEDs, the automated external defibrillators. We have AEDs in every marked patrol vehicle on the road currently, and our staff is trained on that, so that they can be that true first responder. And if they get on scene, there's one more way we can help our community. And then lastly, through all this, and this is probably the coolest thing for me anyway, is through the Oregon State Sheriff's Association earlier this year, a number of your deputies were recognized for life-saving efforts. And that as a first-year sheriff and having deputies recognized in that arena was really, really cool for me, because I know all the sheriffs in the room. I know they're under sheriffs, and so that was really a cool opportunity for this office. Charity events, we talked about a little bit. The pie eating competition. I will clarify. I finished second in the pie eating competition, but Chief Hurley from CPD hogged that pie down, and there was no way I was keeping up with that. We had our initial softball tournament against Lynn County. Bree Miller, who was recently recognized as first citizen, no, not first citizen, small business person of the year for the Corvallis Knights. Bree and I had met Friday morning before that event, and we picked August 2nd as the date for our second annual softball event against Lynn County Sheriff's Office and Sheriff Duncan. I've already notified her of what the date is. And so we'll be moving forward with that. And then we participated in a dodgeball competition hosted by Lynn County to benefit Ophelia's Place. It just shows that we aren't just responding to calls for service or working in the jail, or we're also out in the community participating in stuff. And I really appreciate them like that. We had some key retirements this year. Under Sheriff Riddler retired. Under Sheriff Riddler began with the organization in 2005. So he put 16 years in, and that knowledge and experience left the building, as did Sergeant Randy Heiner. Randy Heiner retired. He started with this office as a reserve in 1994, and then full-time in 1997, and he retired last year. And then Special Services Executive Assistant Lacey Duncan retired after 11 years with Search and Rescue. But Lacey is continuing on working with the posse. She's on the board of directors now with the posse on the board, and she's also helping with the chili cook-off, which I will touch on here in a minute. Staffing, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm not putting a seat in a seat. You know, we're in the same boat as everybody else in the county, but I'm not just gonna hire somebody to hire somebody. The county deserves better, and in this office, and the folks in this office deserve better. So just because somebody may be qualified doesn't mean we're gonna hire them. I want the best of the best, and that's the direction we're going. And I think folks in this office understand that, but they also understand it's a bit of a heavy lift, and with our staffing being as it is right now, there are some sacrifices that have to be made. And then, of course, just retirements and attrition. Every organization seeing it. You know, law enforcement professionals are getting out of the job completely. They're going to other states where maybe it's a different environment. Whatever reason they are, we have to fill those holes. So we're working on it, and it's a slow go. I had a new deputy start earlier this week. I've got 2 new patrol deputies starting next week. You know, we're getting there. It's a process, but we'll get there. And then, as everybody knows, you know, the jail and the issues that it brings. But more importantly, right now, something we're facing, and the commissioners are aware of this, is access to the Oregon State Hospital, and how we are able to work in conjunction with the state hospital, the courts, the DA's office, and the jail to make sure it runs efficiently, and that we're able to keep the doors open. You know, mental health clients are a little bit more, they take more resources, and they just need a little bit more. And so as a result, they get single cells. And so our 40+ bed facility can become a 19 bed facility really quick, and we'll be at capacity and have to shut down. Recently, I opened the jail back up, so at least we are fingerprinting and photographing everybody, and they are coming through the doors. But you know, obviously that's not ideal for this community, and that's not what we want. Opportunities, and again, we have some great opportunities on the horizon for this office. Now that we're on this side, and I get the accreditation persons on board, I want to have a community academy for folks. I want to get back into that. And once we get through the community academy, I want to have a community review board for the office. And I want it to reflect the Benton County community. And so I'll be hitting the commissioners up here shortly just to see if they have names of folks they'd like to see participating in that. I think it's an important process for the entire community. And it just adds that layer of transparency to the office as well. I want to launch an app for our office, and we kind of touched on that a little bit when we interviewed with the advocate. More to come on that, but until I get my special services / social media person on board, that's been put on the back burner. But it will, I think, provide additional access to Benton County residents to not just sheriff's office information, but information across the county. I need to identify an undersheriff and get an undersheriff in that role and in that position. Again, that's just going to give additional supervision, and it will also increase our accountability, because there's just one more layer somebody holding folks accountable if I'm not around, if the captain's not around. It's just that's that accountability piece. The jail and parole and probation, I'm happy to report, are fully staffed. It's just the patrol division that I'm working on. So we'll get there on patrol, but I am happy that the jail and PMP are fully staffed. And we have a backlog of reserve deputies that want to get with the office. So I recently interviewed and brought on 2 additional background investigators on contract. So that'll give me 3 background investigators so we can get through some of these backgrounds a little quicker. And then just lastly, some community engagement stuff. The Justice System Improvement Program. You know, I see a lot of names in here today and then a lot of leaders in this room or in this meeting. And it's our obligation to make sure we're spreading the word. And if you're for it or against it, get involved. You know, tell us what we can do better, what we can do different. Otherwise, you know, we're just going to continue to trudge ahead and maybe miss something. And we've missed some things, and I've learned a ton. And so I encourage everybody to continue to participate in the Justice System Improvement Program as we move forward. We've identified a date for the chili cook-off. We're going to bring the chili cook-off back. It'll be September 11th at the Paloma Frolic. And again, I would encourage everybody to participate in that. It's going to be a great event. We're expanding the amount of chili, and there's some, the National Guard's going to have a helicopter. We're going to have a static display. There's just going to be a lot of really neat stuff going on at that community event. And then, like I mentioned, we'll smoke Lynn County Sheriff's Office again on August 2nd in softball. In fact, I have the trophy from the original one right here. I keep it where I can see it and make sure Sheriff Duncan knows where the trophy's at. So with that, I really went a long time. I apologize. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. Who is judging the chili cook-off?
So Chief Rubin and I are co-chairing it, and because there's going to be several different groups and categories, we've kicked around a lot of names because I think we need to have multiple judges. Otherwise, our judges may need to be wheeled around in a wheelbarrow by the time they're done too.
Sounds good. Any other questions or comments, Commissioner Malone?
Appreciate the report, Sheriff. And one thing I'm really curious about is how those golf balls with your picture on it perform. Do they end up going further than the normal ball, or just so maybe in the next report you can give me that information?
You got it.
I just want to say thank you once again.
And thank you. Again, hold my feet to the fire.
Will do. Well, Sheriff, thank you so much for all of that great information. We appreciate you coming today. We appreciate your time. Thank you. All right. And with that, we will move on to the Agriculture and Wildlife Protection Program Annual Report with Shayna Steinglass. Please correct me on that pronunciation.
That's just Steingass. Everybody puts an L or an R in there. Don't worry.
My apologies.
So good morning, commissioners. I do want to give a little brief introduction for Shayna. She goes by Shay, so it helps us a little bit. And she is our new environmental project coordinator, and she's doing a great job. She's just jumping in with both feet and learning about these programs that I don't really know that very much about. But she's doing all sorts of work for us in the environmental world. She's doing a lot of permits through the NPDS and the TMDL programs. And then she's also doing this AWPP and coordinating with the USDA. So I'm going to let her go ahead and go. Thanks, Shay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Laurel. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for making time for the Agriculture and Wildlife Protection Program this morning. I can't quite top that last bit, so I'm glad to be here. I will try to keep us somewhat on track time-wise. I just began this position the middle of January after Jennifer Ward, my predecessor, moved on to the city of Dallas. And I had the pleasure of actually working with Jennifer Ward in the past and being a little bit familiar with the AWPP. So those who are not familiar, the Ag and Wildlife Protection Program was started in 2017 as a pilot. And it is a community grant program for farmers of all kinds and sizes in Benton County to be able to apply for reimbursable grants up to $5,000 to protect their livestock, crops, and property from wildlife interactions without having to resort to lethal management techniques. So we run on a $45,000 biennial budget, and it's inclusive of $5,000 as well for education and outreach and consultation services from our specialists. We do have a beaver-centric aspect of the program, which is $5,000, which runs year-round outside of the annual grant window for applicants. And that is something that I really hope to amplify and bring to light more in the coming years. So today I'm just going to give you some brief updates of 2021 before I came in, the information that I have. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And then we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about that, the USDA APHIS quarterly reports. So despite the pandemic, there was some great outreach that happened last year. For one, I know that Jennifer answered a lot of inquiries into the program, but she also participated in the Beaver Plus Beaver Nation celebration last year. So there was an AWPP booth there, which is excellent. I am slated to talk March 31st here at the Corvallis event, which is a series of webinars about beavers and beaver ecology run here by Dave Eckert with the Sierra Club. And I'm just going to talk briefly about beavers in Benton County and how they're managed and how we work with them through different aspects of the community. So in 2021, the Ag and Wildlife Protection Program awarded $14,354 in grants to 6 separate Benton County farms for non-lethal wildlife deterrence projects. All of these projects were successfully completed, and they were either visited as follow-ups by Jennifer or myself. The one exception is I am visiting a property next month here to see some fruit trees that were the folks applied for poultry netting, or not poultry netting, bird netting to protect those trees, and they will be putting them up when the trees are blossoming. So it's been a really wonderful experience. And I have to say, since I've come into this program, I get at least weekly inquiries. It's almost been every other day about the program. I've spoken to folks externally, including Mendocino County in California, and the folks from Marion County, who both very much appreciate this program and actually hope to emulate it in their own municipalities. I've also had folks just say that this program is really a feather in Benton County's cap. So I'm really proud to be involved with it. And I guess hope you all realize that it is very highly regarded, both locally and it seems like the word is spreading. So that's really exciting. Last year, the grants that were funded, interestingly enough, a lot of them were fruit tree protection. So we had one grant in Corvallis that protected chickens. That was actually a fairly small farm at 1/2 acre. So it's really cool to see that this program can help farmers on a small scale. That help is not usually available for folks like that. So we did have some protection for sheep, goats, ducks, geese, and chickens, as I said, but there's also 4 grants specifically that requested funding and protection for fruit trees and like hazelnuts to protect from bird foraging. In 2020, we had our one beaver project to protect some trees, and I have not gotten an inquiry since then on beaver projects. So that's something I'd really like to do to amplify the outreach aspect of the program and really highlight that, using beavers, I guess, skills as an ecosystem engineer and partner in restoration is a topic of conversation that's really growing right now. And so it would be really neat to continue to, I guess, highlight that aspect of this program and make this resource more available for folks who may not know about it. So the report that I gave you on the AWPP includes a couple appendices, and Appendix 3 actually is I went ahead and took all of our data from past grants and just pulled it together in one infographic for you to show just kind of the impact of the program. So since 2017, there's been $66,000, over $66,000 allotted to community projects, and that has protected thousands of animals from wildlife impacts, as well as prevented having to resort to lethal management of wildlife for farmers. So the average farm size is about 18 acres, and folks that apply for grants have farms that are anywhere from 1 year old or less to many, many years. So these 25 grants that have been awarded have made a really large impact in Benton County in terms of supporting farmers, providing local food sources for folks, and just general agricultural sustainability. So again, I'm so happy to be part of this program, and I really I'm excited to see where it goes now that I'm lucky enough to be the person that has time to dedicate to making sure it's successful. So I will go ahead and jump really quick just to the quarterly USDA reports that I have from last year, and then I'll go ahead and leave some time for questions and discussion. So what you have in front of you as well are the 2021 quarterly USDA Wildlife Services reports for Benton County. So just as a refresher, there's, I think it's an $85,000 contract with USDA Wildlife Services, and they manage calls regarding wildlife conflicts and predation for local ag. And they also manage a lot of pickup of deer and roadkill, et cetera, on Benton County roads. So the latter half of that report includes those particular calls. And just to clarify, so those front pages, Benton County Activity Report, that is their quarterly report for the first quarter of 2021 through March 31st. And then the second is the second quarter, and then the last section of this is actually combined 2 quarterly reports, July through December. So that being said, they will have another quarterly report coming up as well that I will touch base with them on. So these are a requirement of the USDA Wildlife Services contract that they submit quarterly reports, as I believe that wasn't the case before. So I think with that, I can stop talking at you, and I hope to have a more robust, rounded report next year, having been in the position that long. And just let me know if you have questions on the ag program or these reports. So thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with Benton County.
Thank you, Shay. Thank you for all that great information. And yes, I agree, this program is definitely a jewel. I do have a quick question, which is on, let's see, it's page 5 of the report and page 19 of our packet. The 2021 Grant Awards Summary, number 3, it lists Monmouth. And I believe Monmouth is not in Benton County.
Oh.
Is that supposed to be Monroe, maybe?
That is a very, that's an excellent point. Yeah, that's a great point. This is just I guess a summary of things that were awarded and judged. I'm wondering if maybe it was just a mailing address, or because this was all of the awards are grilled by a panel of experts and wonderful local folks. So it's possible that maybe it was just in that vicinity or something. I can double check on that and get more information.
And Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, I think I can handle that one. Probably Maxfield Creek Road, a couple miles east of us. It turns into if my mailbox was on the north side of the road instead of the south side, we could have a Monmouth address. So it gets confusing, because I had a neighbor who lived up the road who explained to DMV that he had a Monmouth address, but he lived in Benton County, and they were pretty sure that that couldn't happen. So yes, it can. So it's just living out in the country, being on the edge. Both Philomath mail goes up our road, and Monmouth goes down our road. And so pretty sure that's, I don't know the specifics, but I know that you can have a Monmouth address and be in Benton County.
All right, awesome. You learn something new every day. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Ojero?
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Shanna, and I'm looking forward to hearing how the program evolves. And welcome to Benton County.
Thank you.
And I'm particularly grateful to see the reports from the APHIS trapping and lethal kill program. I know that not everything that they do is lethal, but it leans in that direction. And I'm just looking forward to better relationship with that program and to seeing how things can evolve overall, and working with the broader agricultural community. So appreciate your being with us. And I also very excited about any potential future beaver work.
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, well, Shay, good to put a face to the name and welcome. A couple things. You mentioned $5,000 for outreach, and I think you said something about specialists. Are you the specialist, or are there other specialists hiding around?
Well, I'm not sure if they're hiding, and I don't know if I'd call myself a specialist. I do. I'm really excited about this program too. Just as a little background, I did complete my master's and PhD in wildlife science at OSU, and know a fair amount of the background of the challenges that Oregonians face, really with the growing interface with wildlife and development. So I hope I can lend some help to the program through that. But we actually have a designated series of experts in a variety of topics, including livestock guardian dogs, predator behavior, and those general bigger topics. And I guess that would lead me to say that I have been working on updating the AWPP webpage, which is just co.benton.or.us/AWPP. And if you go to the About the Program page, there's actually a list of all of those folks that were involved actually in informed in the creation of the program itself. So those are folks that are nationally and internationally renowned for their work with predators, and they're very kindly available to Benton County, as well as folks. For example, I've gotten inquiries with folks who are interested in getting livestock guardian dogs, and we have a livestock guardian expert that is available to help with that.
Great, because I think the outreach portion, you can reach a lot more people than the, say a dozen that actually have programs through this project. So I guess I wouldn't be at budget time, maybe figure out if $5,000 for outreach is the right amount of money, because now you've got some actual projects under our belts, and it's not so theoretical as it was a few years ago. And just like you mentioned, specialists that might be able to solve a particular problem, and connecting a person with the specialist may do as much good as actually having somebody do a actual project. I was glad to hear that all 6 projects that were funded were completed. I think that means we're doing our homework and making sure that that the project is ready for prime time and ready for funding. So that seems like a nice part of your report. And I guess in the background, I assume wolves are coming, and just how to get ready for that. I mean, I don't know that they're different than cougars or bobcats as far as what they like for dinner, but so appreciate the report, but I guess just go back to stressing the outreach portion and partnering with Benton Soil and Water and some of their programs, and just creating those relationships with other people with similar interests. So you're off to a great start. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I would add that I think outreach is one of the things I'm most excited about with the program. I have a background in science education at all levels, and I just love it. So I hope to do more outreach events. And I don't disagree with you on the budget aspect, especially because now I'm full-time with Benton County, and I can provide part of my job to those efforts as well. So.
All right, any other questions or comments? Thank you so much, Shay. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, we will move on to the discussion regarding crisis center location. And I believe we have Danielle Brown with us to talk about that. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, good morning, commissioners. Thank you for working with me today. We wanted to talk a little bit about our crisis center location, and Nick Kurth is joining us today to talk about it in connection with the JSIP project. As you all are aware, we've been working on crisis center development for about 3 years now, and are really wanting to get the crisis center up and going in support of the JSIP project for the correction system, the forensic system. So as part of the project, we've been working on funding for the brick and mortar section of the build. And we have had a couple of, we've been fortunate that we've had funding come through to help support our program, our project. As a reminder, our original project was developed with the intention of remodeling what used to be the former Board of Commissioners building. We had a feasibility study completed for that location, and realized very quickly that it was going to be much more expensive than we had anticipated due to seismic retrofitting and some significant upgrades that would need to happen in order to fit the crisis center into that location. Our JSIP operations team has been having multiple conversations about the crisis center location. And we're coming to you, commissioners, today to try and get some decisions, or hoping to get some decisions on our location. Again, as a reminder, we do have funding from Representative Rayfield and the total of $1.25 million, Congressman DeFazio in the total of $1 million, and additional funding from the legislative short session this year in the total of about $5.4 million, which should hopefully cover the cost of either construction or new build, remodel for the crisis center. So our total that we have today that's committed to the crisis center is $7,700,002. Don't ask where the $2 came from. Don't know. But we'll take every penny that we can get. Also in your packet, you will see the original remodel estimate from DLR Group for the Board of Commissioners building. And the total on that was about $8.9 million. Again, that's related to the seismic retrofitting and rebuild that needed to be done to, it is making a perfect estimate, Rick, you're correct. That was the fitting the square peg in the round hole of the former Board of Commissioners building. So what we're hoping today is, again, to hopefully get some decision, and we have a couple of options that the JSIP Ops Committee has talked about. We've talked about either moving forward with the remodel of the Board of Commissioners building with the estimated cost from DLR Group. We've talked about building new construction on the D&M Auto lot, which is the lot on the corner of 4th and Van Buren. And Nick and a group of folks have also been working with Lumen to acquire a lot on the corner of 5th and Van Buren. So those are the options that we have right now. Nick, I don't know that I have the most recent update on the Lumen negotiation. Are you open to share that?
Only to say that we're still in discussions and nothing has really changed relative to an outcome at this point.
Okay, thank you for that update. Our JSIP Operations Committee talked pretty in depth about this last week to try and get a recommendation for Board of Commissioners based on what we feel like what the Operations Committee feels like would be the best fit for this crisis center. The other option that I forgot to mention, so I apologize, is to not build a crisis center with the intention of putting it on the campus with the correctional facility following the bond in May of 2023. So that was another option. I apologize for missing that in my explanation. The JSIP Ops Committee, again, talked about it in depth last week and is coming with a recommendation to keep the crisis center, or to locate the crisis center downtown for a variety of reasons. Primarily the accessibility of services in the downtown location for community members who are in need of care at the crisis center. Moving it to the campus is a little bit of a challenge given the location and the lack of public transportation and accessibility to that location should we move forward with that. The downtown location does make it connected to the community-based organizations that are going to be providing support. It's accessible for walk-in, it's accessible for hospital referrals, law enforcement, EMTs, etc. So the JSIP Ops Committee is recommending keeping the crisis center in a downtown location. I will pause there for questions.
Any comments or questions? Commissioner Malone and then Commissioner Ojero.
Danielle, you mentioned transportation concerns with north side, and I've studied that a little bit, and it seems like there's transportation options in the neighborhood, and if we had a significant presence there, I would hope / presume that transportation options would follow the need, that is a little bit of an island at this point, but there's also not much activity there. Hewlett Packard, anyway, Circle is not very far away. Anyway, I think that's probably not, you can't just take what it is currently and say that's how the transportation is going to be once we have a operational campus on the north side.
Yeah, I think my concern with that, Commissioner, is the what if in that. I think there's a lot of moving parts for the campus location that, you know, I do agree that the likelihood of there being transportation opportunities once the campus is built is a possibility, but we also know that that's several years out of today's date. So the other concern with the campus location is the timing for getting the crisis center operational. Knowing that we need this, as Commissioner Ojero said last night at the CHC meeting, we need this yesterday, and the pending of the crisis center post the bond in May of 2023, and waiting for all of those infrastructure updates is a bit of a challenge in terms of the need for the community right now.
Commissioner Ojero?
Thank you. I also wanted to highlight the fact that the other reason for prioritizing the downtown location is that, as Danielle said, the crisis center is a service that is not just in support of the law enforcement side or forensic population that has mental health challenges and struggles, but also the general population for folks that want to just self-refer or whose family brings them in. And so having a site that's not necessarily associated with the criminal legal system is a much more positive in order to make people feel comfortable and destigmatize mental illness and behavioral health challenges.
Any other questions or comments for Danielle? All right, back to you, Danielle.
Okay, thank you. The other part of this conversation is with Gary and Paul regarding the remodel and rebuild. We are definitely looking for some direction again for remodel versus rebuild. We've been working on having some tentative RFPs in place pending the decision from Board of Commissioners for location, so we can move forward with this as quickly as possible, knowing that some of the funding is a little bit time limited. And wanting to be thoughtful about making sure that we asked for funding and we've received it, and not wanting to have to pay that funding back should we not be able to spend it in time. I certainly don't want to do that. The shortest time for the funding, I believe, is we have to have part of it committed by the end of the 2023 fiscal year. And another portion of it spent by October of 2024 in order to meet the qualifications of the funding.
Danielle, I do have a question that I think needs to be addressed as it relates to the site location. I think the numbers that you are sharing do not include the acquisition price of any property downtown. Is that correct, or am I mistaken on that?
No, that is correct, and that's the other advantage of potentially using that D&M auto lot, is that is property that's already owned by the county.
Thank you.
I will also add that there are some changes in City of Corvallis zoning code that we've been meeting with city officials and DLR group to get. DLR is also meeting with the City of Corvallis officials to get a better understanding of those zoning requirement changes, which might include requiring any new builds to be 2 stories. If we built on the D&M lot, that lot is small enough that in order to meet the capacity of the crisis center, it would likely need to be 2 stories in order to meet all of the needs of the community. So I don't foresee that being an issue, but that is a zoning change that is happening with the city of Corvallis, and conversations are happening on understanding and wrapping our head around that code change. We were also hoping for a test fit document from DLR Group for the DNM lot, and we weren't able to get that in time for this meeting today.
So the decision before us today is, what? Are we just?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so the decision, sorry, Commissioner. The decision today is to choose one of the options, either to continue with the remodel of the BOC building, hope to move to keep the crisis center downtown, likely on the DNM auto lot, because that is the most reasonable, and that is a lot that is already owned by the county, or move forward with the crisis center being co-located on the campus on the north site with the correctional facility post the bond in 2023. Those are the three options.
So I have a question. What is our timeline like? I mean, is this a time crunch? Is this a time sensitive decision we need to make today?
It is relatively time sensitive, Commissioner, in order to spend the funding in compliance with the funding requirements, so that it is relatively time sensitive. We want to move forward with getting the RFP out with whichever path we take as soon as possible, so we can get that process started for the construction design bid build. Paul, is that the right word? Design bid build for the construction project, and get the doors open on the crisis center as soon as possible, given the need in the community is just continuing to expand.
Okay, so thank you. It seems like we're making this decision assuming that we will be able to get the lot, or no, or the kitty corner piece. Is that correct? Where it's saying go ahead and that's one of the options is to build there.
Danielle, if you don't mind, I'll interrupt here real quick and address Commissioner Wise's question. So commissioners, as it relates to where we're at with Lumen, we will be updating you later in this meeting in an executive session. I would say that we continue to have interest in all or part of those two parcels that Lumen currently owns. And there's a variety of different options that we've looked at. And so as it relates to the needing additional property in that area, the county still has an interest in pursuing that. As Nick indicated earlier today, we don't have a solution for that as we speak relative to any type of firm agreement with Lumen, but I would say, are making progress. But we do have some really interesting variables that have entered into the discussions. One of those being, I think, what Nick referred to in the last couple of weeks as some of the new city development requirements that will be forthcoming. So we do need to make a decision for a number of reasons fairly quickly. If the board is uncomfortable uncomfortable making a decision today, we certainly do need direction within the next week or two, because as Danielle indicated, every day that we wait is one more day that it's going to take to open that particular facility. So staff, I think we've done our due diligence. We really do want to advance this forward, but we do need direction from the board as to whether or not you agree with the operations team in the recommendation to keep the crisis center downtown. If that's the case, then we'll continue to work with Lumen. And also, just importantly, is the decision to whether or not to use the board's office, previous office, and remodel that, or just focus on new construction. So I would urge the board to consider making a decision today or in the very near future. And with that, I'll end my comment.
So my question is, if we say we would like to build a new building, we do have enough space already that is not dependent on Lumen. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner. Yes.
Okay. And then I saw Commissioner Ojo's hand, and I also saw Nick's hand.
I just want to advocate strongly for making the decision that we use the land that we own down on that block and not reuse the BOC building The BOC building will be an expensive rebuild and will not be an ideal layout or configuration for crisis center. And I would much prefer to build for what the community needs.
Yeah, I would agree with Commissioner Odro. I think a new build allows us to build a location that is much more trauma informed and treatment specific rather than trying to fit the crisis center into the old bank building. I think we could make the Board of Commissioner building work. However, I would also point out in the packet that the remodel for the BOC building is 8.9 million, and the estimate for a new build is 6.7 million for a brand new build from the ground up. Nick, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but go ahead.
I was just going to add a couple of points to help with the decision process. So there's one decision here between remodeling BOC versus building new. On the building new side of the equation, we know that we can build the facility and the size we're contemplating on the D&M lot. That does not mean that were the Lumen lot to come to fruition really in any time, say in the next 6 months, that we couldn't shift our build to there. They're both essentially what we're looking at is they're mirror images of a flat lot on that block. And so we can issue the design RFP, get going on that. It does probably hold up, may hold up permitting a little bit, but we have some time to continue to cultivate an outcome with Lumen without holding up the process really. So you have that trade-off available there. The other point I wanted to make was on the money side. Yes, the estimate from DLR Group was 6 to 6.5 million. That was for a single-story structure, which we can no longer build downtown because of the new CMU3 zoning requirements. Two-story structure will cost about $1 million more based on recent data from John Bales of DLR Group. He gave us an estimate in the range of 10 to 20%. So using an average of 15% on 6 to 6.5 million comes out to 7 to 7.5 million, and we have 7.7 million. So we're still in good shape, but the cost will be more in the neighborhood of everything that we have budgeted for the project.
I'll also add the current lease for the D&M auto lot expires in June of 2022. So it is a contract that is coming up for renewal here very, very soon.
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, I don't have any problem. Once the cost got from 2 or 3 million to remodel to 9 million, and anytime you remodel, you're constrained by what you're working with. So starting fresh, I think makes sense for a couple reasons. One thing, no matter what lot, whether we buy it or own it already, it has a value, and that should be included in talking about the D&M lot. That cost needs to be, even though it's not out of pocket money, it is a cost because that lot has some value. I would, I guess if it's flexible, which I've got a map here. I assume we're talking about siting at the corner of can't read it. Was that Harrison? And so it would be shifting west to the corner of Fifth and Harrison. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah,
Van
Commissioner, it's Van Buren, so it's either on the corner of
Yeah,
4th and Van Buren or 5th and Van Buren.
Right, okay. I even have the tax lot numbers or some numbers, 200 or 300, okay? But we don't own that. We're negotiating with Lumen, and that was and we've been negotiating for a year and a half or whatever it is. So, okay. I think I understand what's going on here. And those lots are approximately the same. They are the same size, okay? I guess, Nick, are we going to get, what kind of information are we going to get later about the Lumen negotiations, or kind of more of the same? We're still talking. And
Well, I have a quick question sorry to interrupt you, Pat, but just really quick, when do we have an estimate on the timeline of when we will get that test fit?
Nick, have you heard from Mitch at all about that test fit for the DNM lot?
Well, that was the information I shared yesterday that Mitch Hine provided. There's no question that the DNM lot or its companion Lumen lot is big enough for the correct crisis center that we're contemplating building in a 2-story format. So roughly you'd have a downstairs of approximately 5,000 square feet. Upstairs, the code is a little less defined at this point, but certainly you could have an 8,000 square foot building. Might have to be larger than 8,000 square feet, but the point being that you could have a downstairs that approximates the 5,000 square foot that we were contemplating for the crisis center with administrative offices upstairs. That would consume roughly half of the lot. The lots are approximately 10,000 square feet. So you'd have the other half for parking, even though the parking requirement is going away with the new CMU3 zoning, but you're still going to want to have parking. So, so even though DLR Group hasn't provided one of their pretty 3D drawings, Mitch's conclusion is based on the code, based on his email exchanges with Jay Yike at City Planning, that it's a viable option.
Okay, perfect. So we know that it's big enough. We know it's an option. We know the price-ish. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if those cost estimates go up. Commissioner Ojero?
I would be happy to make a decision today and provide a motion to do so, but I don't want to rush my fellow commissioners because I've been a bit more involved in this decision process. So what is the pleasure of the chair?
I can make a decision today. Commissioner Malone, what do you think?
I'm uncomfortable. It seems like this is fairly fresh information to me. I don't, you talk about the ops team and we've done this and that, and I respect that work, but you know, later in the meeting, we're going to talk about the Lumen situation, and I'd rather have that information before proceeding. But looking at the calendar, I don't think we have a meeting next Tuesday. Is that correct?
We could make a
Commissioner, that's
decision.
correct.
We could make a decision after we come out of executive session. we could just defer it until later in the agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something the board should consider. Otherwise, as Commissioner Malone was indicating, the next official meeting of the board is not until Tuesday, April 5th.
Okay. So is that what, Pat, would you be more comfortable if we set this aside for now and readdress it after the executive session?
Yes.
All right. Will we need staff there, or do you think we can make a decision? I'm just trying to be cognizant of
Sure.
having all these people wait for us.
I feel like I have enough information from staff and kind of waiting on the Lumen negotiations is what I'm interested, the information I'm interested in.
Okay, and maybe I'll leave it up to the county administrator, or go ahead, Joe.
Just to interject, Commissioner, I think the folks that should be involved in our executive session, of course, are the board and then members of our negotiating team that have been negotiating with Lumen. So that would include myself, Nick Kurth, and Vance Croney.
Okay, I just wanted to double check if we wanted to invite people back after, if there's anyone that we want to invite back. But I can leave that up to you, Joe, if that's.
Actually, I think, we could certainly communicate with Danielle and Gary and Paul, and if they're available, they can come back and rejoin us at the end of the meeting right after the executive session, and Suzanne, assuming that they're available.
Okay. All right, so with that, we will move on from this agenda topic and we will take a 5-minute break and we will come back at that point. Good morning, Director Nichols.
Good morning, Commissioner Wise.
How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. All right, well, I think we're all back from our break. So we can go ahead and move forward with the next agenda item, which is discussion on a constructive, community-based approach to the future of solid waste management in Coffin Butte landfill. And we have with us our Community Development Director, Darren Nichols.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you very much for making time this morning. I appreciate it. This is obviously a very important topic and issue for our community among many. And I think this morning's agenda just underlines how many complex issues we are all asking you to wrestle with. So I just want to start by saying thank you for taking time. It might be appropriate to start by just a quick recap of how we got here. As you know, in mid-2021, the Benton County Community Development Department received an application for a conditional use permit proposing to expand the Coffin Butte landfill. And through October and November, the Solid Waste Advisory Council and the Planning Commission both filed a series
I'm
of
available, but I'll just come and see me if you need me. Thank you.
Oh, pardon me, if you could mute, please.
Through October and November, the Solid Waste Advisory Council and the Planning Commission held a series of public hearings, which led to the Planning Commission's decision on December 7th of last year to deny the application. And following the Planning Commission's denial, the applicants for public services filed an appeal and a request to stay any further action until March 21st. So just to be clear, that would have been yesterday under the process that was in place. But on March 11th, about 10 days ago, Republic Services decided to withdraw its appeal, and so that ended the county's action on that particular conditional use permit application. I have a series of slides if you would like to look at those on the screen, or I'll just work through them, whichever your preference is.
If you put them on the screen, that could be helpful.
Would you like me to do that?
Yes, please.
Darren, you should be able to proceed with that.
Okay, thank you, Erica. Okay, you should be able to see those now.
Looks good.
Okay. So with that bit of background, I thought we'd spend some time today talking about some key objectives that I think are important for the community, some next steps that we're recommending, and then importantly, a role for the board. So when we talk about key objectives, we're really asking, what are the goals for Benton County? And in particular, we're asking about what the goals should be for the community as a whole, for our neighbors, for the landfill and its customers, and really for our future. We're talking about the future of solid waste and ways for us to engage that constructively and proactively. So coming out of that series of hearings, the appeal and the subsequent withdrawal, I think the first objective for us is to listen. I say this in part because the land use process, while it's an important tool, and it does provide some opportunity for public engagement, those opportunities are really limited. You know, as you well know, 3 minutes at a public hearing is difficult for any person to express their views or to provide ideas. those comments are limited to the application and the criteria of the conditional use permit process. And then all of that has to get squeezed inside of a 150-day timeline. Essentially, the land use process rushes a really important community conversation, and it tends to emphasize the process over outcomes or solutions. So we have this window of opportunity following the withdrawal of the appeal. We have this important opportunity to take time to listen and to really hear from some important voices. In essence, we have an opportunity to re-engage the community. We have engaged the community, but this little break in the land use action, I think, provides an important opportunity for us to engage the community intentionally and to hear from key perspectives, and really, like I said a minute ago, to listen with intention. Part of that it will be important for us to provide a space where it's safe for people to share their candid perspectives and to really explore what the options are for moving forward in Benton County. It will also be important for us to build a common information base. Obviously, this is a complex issue. Both solid waste management and its disposal are they're complicated. It's difficult to really understand all of the moving parts, and that I think is one of the things that we took as a lesson learned from the land use process. There's a lot of information out there. I think it will be important for all of us to have access to the same shared information as we find ways to move forward. It will also be important, I think, for the Planning Commission and for you all to make evidence-based or information-based decisions about policies going forward for our future. And then last but not least, I think one of the key objectives is to outline constructive next steps. This is our community, it's our future. It really begins with our first next steps. And this is a way for us to find a way forward by working together. All right, so what does all of that mean? When I talk about next steps, we're going to talk this morning about the first next steps. How do we move from where we are, which is a place of some uncertainty and some conflict, to a place of certainty where we feel like we're proactively engaging our solid waste and disposal future constructively? What are the first next steps that will put us on a constructive path that includes both short-term and long-term solutions to our solid waste future? So here are a few suggestions that I think we should look at. The first is, because we all have a stake in the outcome, it's difficult to build trust from where we are, because all of us have a stake in the outcome. This is a good opportunity for us to ask an objective third party to facilitate the dialogue from this point forward. And I think that will give all of us a chance to participate from an equal or from a more equal standpoint around a table that's essentially level in terms of access and participation. It will also give us an opportunity to be candid in a series of confidential conversations with a third party who can help to assess the situation, find areas of agreement, areas of disagreement, begin to articulate those, and I think most importantly, provide us with a sense for what the options might be for us moving forward as a community. Along the way, the third party will also have an opportunity to identify key perspectives and champions who can articulate the diversity of perspectives that are part of the Benton County community and identify those kind of representative voices who may be willing to explore options by working together. What we're really talking about is finding the art of the possible. And as with so many things that you've talked about this morning already, solid waste, diversion, disposal, really sustainable materials management is not easy. There's no clear one-size-fits-all path forward. And so finding the art of the possible requires many of us to put our voices together and to tug and pull on some ideas. I'm hopeful that an objective third party can help us.
I have Darren as frozen. Is that what other people are saying? Oh,
And
he's
perhaps
back.
even recommend constructive paths forward. Help us build a as possible consensus around. Sounds like you might have lost me for a moment. I apologize. So I think an objective third party can help us build community consensus or some sense of consensus about what our future should be as it pertains to sustainable materials management. And then, as I've said here in this slide, to really reframe this conversation from one that is focused on expanding a landfill to a conversation about Benton County and the Mid-Willamette Valley's future around sustainable materials management, how we handle our materials. So here are some roles for the board, and these are high level, but I think they're really important for where we are in this conversation. First of all, thank you for your leadership and your support for a constructive dialogue. I think that that would be really important for all of us to see you all lead and really lead by example in this conversation going forward. Being open, welcoming all voices, finding ways to listen, and finding ways to move forward in a manner that's constructive and proactive. You also have an opportunity to help provide direction to us to secure a neutral facilitator and funding. We've got some very kind of rough estimates for the first phase to conduct an objective assessment. It looks like could cost anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 for that first phase. So without saying who should provide that funding, if the board will at least provide some direction to staff to begin exploring those opportunities, we would like your help in doing that, or your support to do that. And then any other guidance and direction that you might have for me, for Benton County departments, or for the community as a whole, I think that leadership and direction would be welcome. So thank you very much for all of that, your leadership, your openness, and your support for inclusive, constructive solutions, I think can be really helpful for us. I might just end on this note by saying that I've reached out to some of the key stakeholders, and at this point, I'm very pleased to say that I think we have a strong willingness among many diverse parties to engage constructively. And it feels to me like the community is ready for a consensus-based dialogue with the help of a third party. Even in the language of the withdrawal letter that we received from Republic Services, they expressed their commitment to continue to engage with the community, to listen, and to incorporate feedback in whatever long-term waste management and diversion solutions might be out there. And I've heard similar language from neighboring property owners, similar language from surrounding counties and from key customers. So I feel like we're in a really good place to have this kind of constructive dialogue. And we have some great help available to us at an organization called Oregon Consensus. It's a team of facilitators who specialize in helping communities get to constructive outcomes around these really complex and contentious conversations. So I've reached out to Oregon Consensus. They've been helping the state of Oregon with similar solid waste challenges, and they're interested and willing to explore with us what might be possible here in Benton County. And so I'll stop there by saying thank you again for your support and your leadership.
Thank you, Darren.
Yeah.
Let's see, I saw Commissioner Malone's hand and then Commissioner Ogerow.
I appreciate your efforts, Darren. I wish this kind of dialogue was at the beginning instead of the middle of the process, but it is what it is. The funding just makes sense. This is a significant issue, and that I was glad to see you've identified somebody, a third party that can move forward. I guess one question that I've gotten a fair amount, and I think it's not clear who's in charge here or where the line is between what Benton County's role and responsibility is and what Republic's is. And specific example there is, well, just limit the refuse coming into Benton County, and then the facility would last a long time and problem solved. And I'm pretty sure we can't do that because we don't own it. But I think our just some of the finer details of what we can and can't do. Geography's a big concern, and need to get out there what our options are, if any, as far as geography, but and other probably other questions, but I think that's the one that, at least from the constituent concerns that I've seen, rises to the top. Probably the second is closing Coffin Butte Road. It seemed like that was a concern early on, and then got a broader discussion. But yeah, that's my question.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Malone. I appreciate it. You're asking really good questions, and I think part of the value of walking through an intentional consensus building and information sharing exercise like this, it will help all of us to answer those questions together and understand them better. You're right in that Benton County has some influence over the future of solid waste and disposal, but it's not unlimited. Our ability to regulate the landfill has limits, and I think that was one of the uncertainties that came up in the land use hearing about how much can Benton County do, especially how much can Benton County do through a land use process. And so I know that those questions are very much front and center for many people who are familiar with this conversation, including us as staff. And this, I hope, will provide us an opportunity to answer those in a way that's objective and thorough, and provide consistent access to that information to all of us, so that we're operating from a shared information base as opposed to kind of disparate facts and figures, and often competing facts and figures.
Commissioner Ojero, I saw your hand.
Thank you. I am excited about the prospect of a consensus-based process. And I think that it will give us an opportunity to do several things. One is to identify who all of the interested parties are, because this kind of a land use process is kind of an opportunistic thing where people who have an interest come to the table, but it doesn't it's not very systematic at all. And it's hard to know whether the voices that are the loudest are the really representative of the community or not. Clearly, neighbors have a very strong stake in this decision for so many reasons. But we also know that this is a regional landfill, and we are considered part of a waste shed that includes Lynn, Lincoln, Polk, a little bit of Marion, a bit of Yamhill. And I've already been approached by other county commissioners with an interest in this decision. So we need to clarify who the stakeholders are, what our interests are, and I think most importantly of all, clarify our goals and what it is that we're trying to achieve with the landfill expansion. And that is not trivial. The other is, as you've already mentioned, and Commissioner Malone raised, really needing to understand the regulatory rules and what's within our authority and what isn't. In what elements does DEQ have the final say? And another is to really understand the new producer responsibility recycling regime that was put into place by the legislature in the last long session, but that is just now being built by Department of Environmental Quality and producers of waste. And it's somewhat contingent upon what other states do too, because we're just one small state instead of consumers. So, and I understand it, that system won't be fully in place until 2025, but we all need to understand what it's going to look like so that we build to that and not to a system that is in our rearview window. So I think that a conversation like this is going to be very, very helpful to understand all of the variables and all the interests and to really set common goals. I only hope that we can do it in an expedient fashion because Republic Services is a large corporation and they have their own timeline. And although we get along really, really well with our local folks, we don't really know what the headquarters people are thinking, and they may have their own timeline and agenda. So I think it's important that we here locally clarify our own decision space and do it soon.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I really appreciate it. Just want to pick up on that last comment about time being of the essence. We have a short window of time to re-engage the community in this dialogue, and it's important to move quickly because Republic Services has stated their intent to submit a revised land use application to expand the landfill. So we don't have a specific time frame, but I think we don't want to wait for the next application that puts us back in reactive mode. So having said that, we want to engage quickly, but we want to also engage this dialogue for the long term. So I think there's several components of this. That's partly why I framed this in terms of solid waste management and Coffin Butte landfill, because the landfill is really just a piece of our solid waste future. And we want to understand all of those components, including things that we can do to limit the amount of solid waste that we produce, and to also find ways to divert those materials into other streams that can be reused or recycled or composted. So, there's a lot of responsibility here on Republic Services and how they operate in the landfill, but there's a responsibility, I think, on all of us to really think about how we manage our solid waste streams in the short term and in the long term. So thank you for those comments. I appreciate that.
I have some comments and a question, and my comments might be a little similar to Commissioner Ogero's. But, I just sitting here thinking about when I was a kid or a teenager, I never thought I would get so excited over an opportunity for land use and landfill stuff, but here I am. So, I just have to say, seeing on our agenda, a constructive community-based approach, that's great. That just warms my heart. So when we think about community-based, who is that community? Is it just Benton County? Is it all the other counties that Commissioner Ojero mentioned? So that's my question. And then Pat, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I had some thoughts that Darren touched on, and in the, I guess, category of recycling and figure out how we can do a much better job of not filling up the landfill. I mean, I think of all the construction debris that's being developed with all the activity we've got. And a couple of years ago, there was talk of I think a transfer facility in conjunction with Coffin, Butte to separate out construction debris, and Republic seemed interested that they could haul the debris up to their Kaiser facility in the same trucks that were hauling refuge down to Coffin, Butte, and make a backfill. So the trucks were loaded in both directions, and I'm not quite sure. The last I remember of that discussion was, well, it's too expensive to build the facility, but I think that needs to be looked at again. I remember some figure of up to 20% of what goes in the landfill is construction debris. And I suppose that comes and goes with what's going on around the community. But that's just one. The facility will last longer if we don't put so much in every day. And I think part of the discussion with the community is, okay, what can we do? And that includes Republic to have less tonnage going in. And that should be the future, just like Commissioner Ojero talked about the legislation that's not in place right now, but will be in a couple of years. And well, what does that do? How can we take advantage of that and use that? But I think this discussion has got to be doing better at reusing, recycling, and have that be one of our goals.
Joe?
Thank you, Commissioner. Darren, the question I have for you relates to roles, and you talked about this in your presentation. One of the observations is that the commissioners have been beginning to receive numerous inquiries from members of the community to meet with them. Our County Attorney Vance Croney made it clear to the board that since there's no longer a pending land use application that's being considered, the board does have that flexibility now to interface with constituents on this topic. One of the concerns that I have relates to how do we, what role does the board play? You talked about leadership, but how do we make sure that any conversations the board is having individually with constituents or collectively is really, if you will, directed more so into this process that you're suggesting, because there could be a number of parallel conversations going on which may not serve the community or the commissioners for that matter. And so any clarity you can give on, how do we manage those stakeholder interests and make it part of the dialogue that you're suggesting with a third-party facilitator would be helpful.
Thank you, Joe, for asking the question. Very good question. So I'm not going to say too much about the specific next steps because I don't want to get ahead of the third-party experts. What I would suggest, though, is that we consider giving ourselves space as a community to have those kind of first conversations that we need to have in a way that's confidential, respectful, and candid. That's going to take a little bit of time. And I think it's appropriate at this point because the emotions are very high. Obviously, there are a lot of voices, a lot of perspectives who want to be heard. But to the extent that the board and really the community can give itself space to take a step back and really just spend some time in listening mode with the help of a neutral facilitator, that will help us then to re-engage at the appropriate time in a way that's more better informed and more inclusive. So without saying exactly what I think that next step should be, because I really think that's the job of the neutral third party, I think, though, that we should consider giving ourselves a little bit of space and a bit of a timeout. So rather than ask the board members to respond to every email that comes in and every idea, let's give the process a chance to work and then commit to re-engage on this topic, both for Coffin Butte, but also for this longer term conversation about solid waste. And if the board is willing to make that kind of commitment, I think our community would be willing to have some patience with us, especially if we commit to making sure that all key perspectives are included in the dialogue. And that should provide some reassurance that we're going to get back together in some way as a community. But in the meantime, give ourselves a little bit of space for that important kind of first step to happen. I hope that's clear. I don't want to speak for a third party. We haven't selected anyone yet. We need to make sure we get the right person or team on board. I don't want to give them space to work with us, but I would encourage us to give each other a little bit of space and some grace to approach this in a way that is indeed constructive, because this is not an easy conversation. It's going to be complicated, and we're going to need to take the time to listen to each other. So I hope that helps, Joe.
Thank you.
Would it be appropriate for perhaps the board chair to respond just with like a short and sweet email saying, you know, we're re-engaging in a new process and there will be more to come, you know, something like that?
Thank you, Commissioner Wise. I think that would be really helpful. That way people know that they're getting a response, but they also understand the context and some kind of a time frame too. I think these processes always work better when we commit to a certain time frame. It's not open-ended. Sometimes a deadline actually creates a sense of urgency for all of us to get together and get serious, get our sleeves rolled up. So yes, I like that. And thank you, that would be great.
Perfect. So in your presentation, you mentioned what you're looking for from us, which included direction to secure a neutral facilitator and investigating funding for that, and then other guidance. So to my fellow commissioners, would we like to give direction to secure a neutral facilitator? I see 2 thumbs up. Is there a motion in the packet maybe?
No.
I'll do.
There's no motion needed today. I don't think this requires formal action, but and I think what I've heard today is support in some direction. So thank you. I would encourage. So thank you for the encouragement. I'll commit to bring something back to you, probably in the form of a presentation from Oregon Consensus or a member of their team with some specific next steps based on their professional expertise.
Great. And then the other part was other guidance and direction. So is there any other guidance or direction, commissioners, that you would like to talk about?
I think I covered it in my comments already. I don't think I have any additional guidance at this time. I just look forward to the process.
I would just say I think it's important to respond. I mean, I don't know how many emails I have parked in my Coffin Butte file, and because we couldn't respond till a week ago, I think it's important to at least state just what you've said. A relatively short. This is what we're working on. This is our plan, and maybe even I guess at a timetable if that's can be done at this time. If not, just as soon as we can, kind of language. But I think it's critical to re-engage the conversation. We're taking this seriously, and we have an opportunity to do this right, and we're taking advantage of that.
Thank you. Joe, any other comments from you?
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't have any additional comments or questions.
Thank you. All right, Darren, do you have what you need from us?
I do. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Look forward to working with you. I agree. I never thought in my career ever that I would be excited about landfills and land use, but I am, and I feel really good about where we are as a community and the steps going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming and helping us with this process.
Well, and I think opportunity is the right word. And let's take advantage of it.
All right, very good. Well, thank you, Darren. Have a great day. And then something that came to my attention, there was a motion in the packet for the CWPP that we missed. Do we need to go back and make that motion, or?
Commissioner, that would be preferable.
All right, so let's go back to agenda item 3.2, and I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move to accept the 2021 Agriculture and Wildlife Protection Program.
Report, yeah. Okay,
Oh,
I'll
report.
second
Yeah.
that motion.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
AWPP.
All right. And then was there anything else that I missed before we move on to information sharing? Hearing none. Okay. So now we were moving on to information sharing, and it looks like I am up first. One bit of information. We got an email from Blake Pang, and he is looking for a commissioner to sit and serve on the, let's see, it's the Federal Emergency Food and Shelter Program, the EFSP, through United Way. Ann Schuster filled this role previously. So if we would like to have a short conversation about that and decide which one of the three of us would like to fill that role. Thoughts?
I have plenty on my plate. I don't need to take on another community role, but we'll backstop if no one else wants to do it.
And I think he said it's 2 meetings, 2 1-hour meetings. Pat, are you interested?
I raised my hand last time on the, what is it? Oh, Nick, help me out here. And
I know what you're talking about. There was wildfire or something.
no, this was the hiring
RFP for the construction manager. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Owner's rep.
that's relatively short term, but it's taken more time than I thought, and just gets stuck randomly in my calendar. So till that's over, I'll pass on raising my hand again.
All right. Well, I guess that leaves me. So I would be happy to do it. And I will email Blake and let him know. Some more information that I have to share. I know I've shared before that I got appointed onto the LOAC, the Local Officials Advisory Committee. In that capacity, I was invited to sit in on the interviews for the finalists for the DLCD, the Department of Land Conservation and Development director. So I got to sit in on 2 candidates applying for that director role, which was great, and provide my feedback. So that was a really good opportunity. I enjoyed that. And My department tours continue. I toured the juvenile department yesterday. Let's see, I also toured the behavioral health. Oh, now I'm mixing them up. I'm touring assessment today. Anyway, so many different tours, so little time. But so far they've been very enjoyable, and my favorite part has been just meeting staff and being able to talk to people and just kind of getting a feel for what they do every day, how they spend their time. And it's been really inspiring to hear just how much they love their jobs and like doing what they do. And I think I will end it at that and move on to Commissioner Malone.
Okay, I got it here. I'm on the committee to pick the owner's rep for the JSIP project. And it was an unfamiliar term when I started, and apparently it's still an unfamiliar term to me. But yesterday there's Nick finally. Yesterday we interviewed a candidate for the Fair Board, Aurora Jensen. I invited her to the meeting last night, and she showed up, which is a very good sign that she's not quite official yet, but I think she'll be a nice addition to the Fair Board. Let's see. We at the meeting last night had a presentation of all the things between parks and natural areas and parks and events part of the department. And Joe, you'll be happy to know that the new structure is probably needed a while ago, but is working well, just especially with difficulty filling positions, to be able to shift from parks to fair and vice versa, depending on the need. It just gives some much needed flexibility, and like you were saying in the beginning, kind of possible for career advancement, and not so small departments, not so heavily dependent on one person being able to be there every day to keep things running. So I think it was probably a half-hour presentation, just Shane, I think the head maintenance person, just saying what all the responsibilities are, and fairly small budget, fairly small staff, and keeping things running. The fair part is asked for, I think it was, oh no, that's something else. Well, I'll do that one. There was a $10 million money for the fairgrounds across the state, and to keep the arithmetic simple, they divided 10 million by 36, and you got, each county is getting 270,000 for capital improvements. There's a little question on the timing. Some dollars may come in fairly soon, and so the staff's figuring out what the priorities are, and one might be HVAC in Gerber Hall, because it has been known to fail in the middle of people renting it and having an activity there. So, but that's developing a priority list to use that. The county fair is on, but because of the 2-year layoff, getting The carnival is a little bit of a challenge because some of those folks are no longer in business, and the ones that are in business, I assume, are having the same labor shortage that everybody else is. And so, but Lynn is cautiously optimistic. Joe, you'll be interested in this. Lynn has figured out at the board retreat, probably needed a facilitator to keep the discussion on track. And so next time, to have, just like we were talking about previous, was having a third party run the discussion and help people keep on track. So, and there was a question when the 4 micro shelters are going to be up and running at the fairgrounds, and somebody was guessing July 1st, and I hadn't heard. I know we had an April start date that may be slipping, but
Commissioner, I can get clarity on that topic for you and email the board. I can't confirm the date you just mentioned, but I can certainly have Suzanne share the current status on that, and I'll forward that to the board.
Great, because I think it's important what I pointed out to the group last night. Yes, this is a small number, but at least get it started as a pilot project, and hopefully have good success with it, and then can scale it up from there. But it's important to go from the planning stage to having actual shelters and a functional program. So I can't remember what else I've been doing. Nick has helped fill up my calendar with that owner's representative. We've got 3 firms still in the running. We dropped one kind of in the first round, and we'll have interviews, I think, next week. I'm not sure. Yeah, we got the doodle poll back, and so in the next couple of weeks, we'll interview the 3 firms and pick one. Nick, I don't remember what the goal was for bringing them on board once we decide, but I think that's fairly soon, isn't it?
It is soon, yeah. Hoping to have them on board. Well, we were originally hoping to have them on board by kind of the 1st of April. Had to defer that a little bit, but I would say by mid-April now we should have a contract in place. And of course, the immediate support that they'll provide is for advancing the new courthouse, and there are other facilities that they could be involved in as well. We just hadn't made decisions about that yet.
Okay, well, that's what calendars are for. Last Wednesday, I attended the LBCC board meeting as a budget committee, and so there was a fair amount of talk on the budget. And then next day I went to the Philomath Chamber of Commerce noon luncheon, and there was President Lisa Avery making a presentation, and well attended, and I think well received. Talked a little bit about their levy ask that's on the ballot this May. I wish they were a little more visible, but it's a good ask, and I think I remember the number of 7. They're asking for 7 cents per thousand, which works out to $17 on your theoretical $250,000 house, $17 a year. So because it's spread over such a wide area, wide number of people, it's a relatively small ask. I think it works out to $16 million, and so it's a good program. And then the next night, I went to celebrate Corvallis, and there was President Lisa Avery again. So I got to see her 3 days in a row, and I'm not quite sure how that happened, but I think she's a real asset to the college and to the community. And with that, a week ago, AOC meeting, a 2-day meeting in Salem. First day was kind of the regular legislative committee and board meeting, and then Tuesday after our 8 o'clock board meeting, that at a 9 to 3 o'clock retreat with a facilitator, kind of going over the concerns about urban counties, rural counties, and how to have a single voice out of that mixture. And I think partly because of lack of in-person meetings, lack of in-person conversations, that the group is more strained than normal, and real concerns about the future. And the retreat was to look in the next 3 or 4 years. What do we want from the organization? So with that, I will stop. I was busier than I thought. No wonder I'm tired.
Thank you, Commissioner Malone. Commissioner Ojero?
Thank you. I've had the opportunity to have several community conversations over the past month. It's telling that we have opened up a bit more in terms of COVID precautions waning because of the number of in-person meetings that have taken place. Several of them have had to do with aspects of housing and homelessness. I know I passed that topic on to Commissioner Wise, but I have relationships that are still dangling and trailing. So I want to make sure that I convey those conversations so that you're aware of them. And I've been letting people know that you're taking over that area. People are really eager to reach out and meet with you as well, Chair Wise. So one of those was Jane Barth, who's the one of the board members for Unity Shelter. And she also works as a contractor for the Siuslaw National Forest. And the National Forest, blanking on the title, lead is Robert Sanchez, and he has expressed a strong interest in working on homelessness issues as well, because here, just as in on the east side of the Deschutes National Forest and other places, they are seeing more and more casual camping and long-term camping in non-designated campground areas. Sanchez has some interesting ideas about helping to contribute to the local conversation. And so I shared his interest with some of our staff, and I believe that Jesse Ott is going to reach back out to him to include some of these conversations about homelessness and land management in their land managers group that's already talking about other common issues across our local land managers, like Corvallis Parks, our parks and natural areas, Starker Forests, OSU, et cetera. So that was an interesting conversation. The other conversation I've had about housing, I met briefly to check in with Rebecca Weinsteiger, who's the local liaison for Dev Northwest here, and to find out about the status of their housing plans here in South Corvallis. and to check in on how the organization is doing, since they've gone pretty quiet over the last few months. COVID has been hard on them in terms of maintaining staffing. So I hope that they will be picking up and having a greater presence in the community again to move their low-income housing, affordable housing options forward. So again, Nancy, I think that that's another contact that would be good to pick up on. The next conversation I had about housing was as a result of the conversation with Rebecca and the news about the fact that there's another turnkey opportunity open and to request more funds from the state. And in order to make some of our permanent supportive housing options viable, or even very extremely low income housing options, one of the best things to do is to have project-based vouchers, the HUD vouchers, Section 8, in conjunction with a place, because it helps those operators of those housing operations to be able to pay the bills. And yet it's a very, very difficult thing for the Lynn-Benton Housing Authority to provide, because those project-based vouchers take a whole different type of management than their person-based vouchers do. And so I had a good conversation with Donna Holt from Lynn-Benton Housing Authority. Their board is understanding of the fact that those project-based vouchers would be really, really helpful to getting more low-income housing in the community, but it's a balancing act for them as an organization. So anything we can do to continue to advocate at the federal level for less bureaucratic management of the Housing and Urban Development Voucher Program, to expand voucher availability, to expand the funding for housing authorities would be really helpful here locally. Secondly, as you know, Rep. Rayfield provided some funding directly to the Lynn-Benton Housing Authority from his state allocation of ARPA dollars in order for the Housing Authority to invest on the Benton County side of the river. Right now, 30% of the resources, the federal resources that come to the Housing Authority go to Benton County, and the remaining 70% go to Lynn County, just because of the fact that housing is so much more affordable over there and there are more options for voucher holders. So Rep. Rayfield really wants to get more of that low-income housing over here so that we have more support for our lower income population here in Benton County. And I was offering Donna Holt support, in whatever way we can as an organization to make that possible and to make that investment by Representative Rayfield and the state a reality here on the Benton side of the river. And just updated her about our project management hire for our HOPE team, so that potentially that person could also keep an eye out for real estate that would be usable by the Housing Authority. Next, I have continued to have conversations on the mental health and law enforcement overlap area. I am enjoying the liaison role to MADAC, the Mental Health and Developmental Diversity Advisory Committee, and see how that evolves. But more significantly, the Willamette Criminal Justice Council Mental Health Law Enforcement Subcommittee continues to oversee the core program and to talk about other ways to collaborate there. And there's a new working group that formed out of the Oregon Justice Department's Behavioral Health Summit, convened by Judge Donahue. And that working group is focused primarily on the whole aid and assist process, or folks that cannot represent themselves well enough in legal proceedings and therefore need to be restored by time at the state hospital before they can help in their own defense. That whole aid and assist issue has been a really hot topic at the AOC meetings over time, but they weren't as pressing here until the last year or so. But right now, as we've heard from Sheriff Van Arsdale, we have, and from Danielle Brown, anywhere from 3 to 6, 7 people in our jail at any one time that are waiting to go to the Oregon State Hospital for that restoration. So this Aid and Assist Working Group is focusing on 2 things: on how, when people come back from the state hospital, they can get hearings as quickly as possible so that they don't once again decompensate and become unable to aid themselves before they go to trial, and how to keep folks out of the jail altogether so that they don't end up really going downhill and then needing to go to the state hospital. So it's so far been productive. This group includes a representative from the DA's office, from behavioral health, of course, from ARC of Benton County, Gobi, the sheriff's office, and the OJD staff, including Chris Westfall here locally. So it's been a great conversation, and I'm hoping we'll come to some significant outcomes. One of the immediate tasks is that the state just released a grant opportunity, Oregon Health Authority did, for mental health housing. And that will allow us, if we succeed and have a successful proposal, to get more dollars for to house people when they come back from the state hospital or outside of the jail, or to prevent people from having to go to the jail in the first place, given that they have mental health issues primarily and not legal issues. So that is a wonderful opportunity. The only last thing is that to just touch upon the meeting I had that I know Nancy also has had with Kate Portia from our Economic Development Office and the owners of Leaping Lamb Farms out in LC, Scotty and Greg, and about the challenges that they're facing with their agritourism operation, their farm stay program. I know that that has been a going and vital concern for many years. They are national leaders in the farm stay movement, but they have recently discovered that the county doesn't consider them a legal operation, and so they have been kind of thrown into turmoil. I reached out to Darren Nichols. He's going to be meeting with them, and so I know that's in good hands. But I know it's something that all 3 of us were contacted about. So just wanted to mention that I had a good session with them this last week. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Ojero. And I'll just add, I'm actually meeting with Darren Nichols today about that topic. So not necessarily the application, but kind of the bigger overarching topic of agritourism. All right, so with that, we can move on to Joe Kirby, County Administrator.
Thank you, Commissioner Wise. Commissioners, I have 4 updates for you. The first one includes Rick Krager, so I'd ask Rick to go ahead and join us. And Erica, if you can give Rick permission to share his screen. What I'm wanting to do is to have Rick share with the board a tool that he created. Rick and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and as you know, we've been fairly successful in starting to bring in money to help offset some of our costs regarding our justice system improvement program. And as a result of that money starting to come in, it started to get kind of confusing as related to what money we're receiving for which project and how much and from whom. And so I asked Rick to create what I call a financial touchstone here for myself, the board, and other staff members to use to keep us grounded on the various JSIP projects and what the funding looks like for each one of those projects as we go along. So we certainly hope to receive additional funding from outside resources over the course of the next year, and this will be a great tool for us to use as our touchstone as it relates to our financial picture at any given time regarding the investments that we plan to make and what assistance we're getting from others to help with those improvements. So with that being said, I'd like to ask Rick to jump in and spend about 10 minutes reviewing this information with you and having the board provide Rick and myself and Nick Kurth any feedback you may have. So with that being said, Rick, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Joe. Good morning, commissioners. Good to see you. Again, I want to sort of start by giving Joe kudos for this when he had talked to me about it. I think he was probably getting tired of hearing Nick and I rattle off numbers all the time in terms of different resources and different costs. And certainly, like he said, it does get very confusing. And so it was a really good idea to try to bring this all together rather than being in somebody's head or some spreadsheet somewhere. So this is an attempt to really, as Joe said, outline all of the components of the Justice Systems Improvement Project. And so just to kind of start and move you through this from kind of a left to right type standpoint, we have really essentially broken it into 5 parts. The first being the Behavioral Crisis Relief Center, which I know there was discussions about that here this morning. Then we have the Emergency Operations Center. And then this was kind of I talked to Nick about this, but just to really sort of outline the Justice System Campus. And this is really thinking about not only obviously the acquisition of the land is something that we've been talking a lot about here recently, but this is all components of the sheriff's office, the jail, the correctional facility, as well as the courthouse, along with the district attorney offices that would be part of it. So I sort of just lumped all that in as one, because I think this is the component that I think for at least the most part we're feeling like would be all one campus together. I obviously know that could change, and decisions could make that different going down the road, but certainly at this point, just for modeling, that's how I have captured it. The other piece that we don't want to lose sight of is the historic courthouse and what we do to that in terms of rehabilitation, and that was something that obviously was put forward within the original JSIP plan. And then this other part, this unbudgeted program support, it's not big, but it's important. Obviously, these are a lot of the key investments that I think we all know we need, not only for really helping us move forward with the management of this project, but also really thinking about the bond going forward and how do we position ourselves best as a county. So these are very important contracts that Nick is responsible for, a lot of it around, again, the communication, administrative support, etc. This could change. This is a fluid document. As you know, we obviously will update as we know more information and we get better estimates and we have other potential revenue opportunities down the road. But at least at this point where you see current cost estimates, this is the best information. This is mine and Nick's best thinking at this point. Some of it has maybe a little bit more specific information than others. Clearly, I think one of the things that is going to be critical, especially here as we move forward in the next few months, is really getting these estimates tight. Especially for the areas that we are looking to move forward, like the Behavioral Crisis Relief Center, like the Emergency Operations Center. Obviously, the Justice System Campus, a lot of it you'll see as we move further along, is going to likely be dependent on larger resources down the road. So we probably have a little more time, but there are elements, obviously, like land acquisition that we're really going to need to be able to nail down. So I think that's something you'll hear from both Nick and I as we go forward, is how do we get these estimates tight? How do we get as close as possible? Now, the difficulty, as we all know, is we're in a terrible situation now with the economy and where things are going, where prices are going. And, we're hearing that, there are changes monthly, increases. So it's going to be difficult, but we're going to have to really stay on top of that and really watch that closely and do the best we can. But what you see there in the current cost estimate, again, is information that, again, Nick and I have come together on. Some of this you may be familiar, like with the EOC. This is exactly what we put forward during the state legislative process as our estimate. The Behavioral Crisis Relief Center, it's almost what we put forward. Obviously, there's various options that still need to be considered by all of you, but I think that this is a pretty safe estimate. I would say the Justice System Campus is the one that, probably needs some more massaging. These are older numbers. A lot of this came from some of the stuff that was worked on early on, and we're going to obviously need to upgrade and change those costs as we move forward. So then as you move, and the attempt here is to really give you where all the resources coming from. And so back to what Joe was saying, it's like, I think I would always throw different things out to him, and Joe's head's probably going, what, gosh, wait a minute. Can I get a picture of this? Can I see all of this in one place? So starting with the county resources, and again, these are all things that I consider as what I would call a hard commitment, that, you know, we've done the analysis, we know the money is either in the bank, or we've done the kind of, particularly around capital financing and speaking with you back in November about what we can commit to be able to move things forward. So starting with the county resources, I first put the American Rescue Plan Act. These are the county dollars specifically. Now I could have put that under the federal column. I didn't, primarily because they really, to me, feel like county money. They don't feel like traditional federal dollars. I mean, it's like, here's the money. We get a whole lump sum. We don't have to do reimbursement. So in some ways, it's, well, it is much more flexible. But what you can see here is essentially what we have either committed or preliminary committed. In this particular case, you can see that all of those dollars are specifically to the land acquisition, the $4,250,000 that we have put a preliminary hold on as it relates to those resource allocation. And this was part of that whole process, actually back when I started in October, that we went through to identify all of those so that we could ultimately get to what we put out to the rest of the community through the NOFO process. Continuing to move along, capital financing. This goes back to our discussion in December, as you recall. We talked to you about the levels of capital financing we can do. Why that was important was because we need to have that commitment at some point to be able to get the state dollars that you will see here shortly. So that's what that represents. Obviously, how we choose to do that is a decision down the road. I did asterisks for you because I think it's important for us to know that, you know, there's a cost for borrowing. And so our estimates are down there below in the footnote. So you can see, you know, this is what we would be on the hook for over the 20-year period. Obviously, that probably needs to be updated here relatively shortly. While I put a lot of cushion in that for you, rates are climbing. So that's something that we're going to likely need to update soon. And then there's just general fund reserves. These are the dollars that I'm looking at right now. We have about $4.4 million of untapped general fund reserves at this point. I put this there somewhat softly because obviously we could have others. We have a lot of savings. When we do our budget report to you here in a couple of weeks, you're going to see that we are under spending as it relates where we're at, particularly in our general fund. So there are probably more flexibilities. But I like to be able to at least show you worst case scenario. If we spend all of our budget in accordance the way we planned, we would need to tap into the reserves. State resources, the American Rescue Plan Act. This is the money that was committed through Representative Rayfield. You can see the $1,250,000 there, along with, well, that is the only source. That was specifically for the Behavioral Crisis Center. And then, as I mentioned shortly ago, the Oregon Judicial Department, Nick and I are having lots of conversations right now about getting that resource committed. That's the match amount to that capital financing that we were just talking about. And then lastly, the general fund that we just recently got, the $5,450,000 and $2. I like to emphasize that $2. Good estimating is what I call it. So that is what we just got appropriated. And I haven't checked recently, but I think the governor's probably signed it by now. But all likelihood is we'll see that money in the next month or so. And then lastly is the two federal resources that were officially approved in the omnibus bill here a few weeks ago. I have done some research around both of these grants. So now I think I have a little bit more. Well, first of all, I verified it and validated it to make sure our name was actually in the bill. But in addition, trying to figure out the programs and the agencies that these are going to fall under. The first one, and I think we kind of knew this, is for the Merkley money, the Emergency Operations Center. It will require a match. That's why you see the $333,000 over there. The law says that it can only be 75% of the total share. And then the other one that I'm still trying to understand a little bit more is this $1 million, and it's coming from DHHS. It's going to come from the HRSA dollars, but it doesn't really identify a program. So it's still a mystery. And so more information to come on that. But bottom line, it's committed. So this just is a way of showing here's all the committed resources for the particular project. And then you can see the total uncommitted resources, which leaves us, ultimately where do we need to try to find other resources for some of these areas? And ultimately, what is the sizing of the bond that we might need to put forward in the future? Down at the bottom, you have a nice little summary here that can kind of show you just where all of the total resources are currently coming from. All in all, right now, it's about $150 million price tag. Quite frankly, I think it probably is going to be a little higher than that. I think obviously some of these estimates will need to be updated. Once we have finer estimates, we can load this into here and have a better idea of our sizing around our bond and what we will want to do. I also believe, I think we saw clearly here in this last session that, we were successful, obviously. I think there's a lot of money on the table. The revenue forecast still looks good in the state. Recent presentation by state economists indicated things are still going well. And when I look at all the allocations that come to counties during this last session, I think we have an opportunity to maybe pursue in the full session going forward. So maybe we can fill some of these holes. And then I think lastly, what I would say is that while we have kind of gone out from a conservative standpoint, as you might recall, I talked to you about sort of the conservative method for capital financing. We could probably be a little more aggressive, but that's a discussion I think we'll need to have and evaluate and determine, okay, how much more aggressive do we want to be? How much more risk do we want to be? And that's a conversation probably for the future. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Again, appreciation for Joe for pushing on this because I think it's important to make sure you see the big picture. Commissioner Ogerow, I'm sorry. Sorry, Commissioner Wise, that's your job.
That's okay. I was just going to say thank you so much. This is very helpful. And I saw Commissioner Ogerow's hand and then Commissioner Malone.
Thank you. I agree. This is very helpful. And I look forward to continuing to making this very much a living document and to adding resources to it as we go along. I have a couple comments and questions. One under the historic courthouse item, you have rehabilitation here. And I think that I'd like to change that language if we might, because we've been talking about seismic rehabilitation and we've been talking about the rehabilitation that might be funded by the state and the legislature the next session to do the boiler and the roof and painting. And this sum of money is definitely the latter and not the seismic work. And I think we need to be clear that, about that. The seismic work will take a lot more money than 5 million or 5,000. That's 5 million. Sorry. The other piece is that I attended a NACO seminar the other day about 988 funding for the new mental health crisis hotline nationally. And in that presentation, there was a discussion of a whole bunch of new resources that came down in the fiscal 22 budget from the federal level. And one of them was a new program that was supported by Senator Cornyn called Crisis Stabilization Community Reentry Grants. And what they were talking about was crisis centers. So it may well be that the money that we have here under HRSA is that under that new program. I don't know. But that would be a reason that we haven't been able to find it as easily. But because of that new crisis call center function, there's quite a bit of new money coming in from the feds for this kind of initiative for the crisis continuum.
Right. And Commissioner Ogerow, just one point to something you said in terms of, there not only is there a lot of money from the state standpoint, but the federal has a lot of allocation as well. And I think that, it would be worth probably combing through a lot of that legislation because there could be opportunities we're just not even seeing. And that, would be application. So that's something I actually have on my radar to talk to Joe a little bit about in terms of how do we maybe move forward with, because it's a lot of work, obviously, to go through all these federal programs and stuff, but I think it would be worthwhile trying to see if we can leverage some further programs.
Agreed. And I think we need to enlist both Carla Jones and Suzanne Hoffman in watching for some of those offerings that are starting to come out. There was a total of several $1 million, 125 or 130 million that was listed on this call. And yeah, that's a drop in the bucket nationally, but
Yeah.
opportunity.
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, I really appreciate this effort, Rick, and I would love to have a copy. I realize that it may change frequently, but at least you've got the categories established, and changing the numbers is relatively painless, but especially if they head in our favor. But I really appreciate having this kind of summary. It's helpful, and especially as things change, get added, moved around, that it's a lot easier not to get lost in the weeds. So send me a copy soon. This is very helpful. So
Absolutely. I'll make sure that updated copy, and I'll keep this fresh so that obviously as we make updates, you'll know by, an updated date or something that there's a new copy on this, because you're right, it will evolve and change as we move through.
And I guess the only comment, if there are soft numbers and you may have already done it, I can't see, it's kind of small on my screen. Asterisk with, well, we think this is coming. It's not in the bank yet, so we know we can separate out the firm numbers from the hopeful numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the only asterisk that I would put in terms of the resource, everything is hard with the exception of capital financing. I think what we have on capital financing is an analysis that suggests, based on where we're at, this would be a very doable cost or a borrowing strategy. But obviously that, until it's in the bank, like you said, it's still, things could change.
Well, and thanks, Joe, for getting this going. This is very helpful.
Rick did all the heavy lifting, so I just had the idea and Rick did the rest.
Well, I want to make sure I give Nick credit too. He's definitely the estimate guy. So we are a partner in crime here on this. So we work closely together on this, and so lots of help from him as well.
Well, I love that. Teamwork makes the dream work. So good job, everybody.
Thank you, commissioners. I just have 3 other quick updates for you. First and foremost, I wanted to just give you an update regarding our board meeting room here at the Calapooya building. It was intended to be part of phase 1 remodeling. It was not completed when we moved in, as you well know. That room continues to be under a reconstruction, if you will. We're hoping to have that room released to us as of April 4th, where the room could actually be used for some types of meetings, but not all types of meetings. As I reported to you, I think 2 weeks ago, we were going to begin looking at when the board would start meeting in person again in that particular space. We do have a meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, which between facilities and IT and our board staff to try and put a plan as to how we can begin to migrate meeting in that room and when that would occur. As part of that room and the remodeling that's occurring, we've also invested in a new audio-visual system, as you're all aware. That is one of the areas where we're running into challenges. Initially, we were thinking the vendor would have that equipment installed in that room probably the middle of June. was kind of where we were at until last week when we received an update from the vendor. And it's very likely due to supply chain issues that room in terms of audio visual capability will not be fully outfitted potentially until August approximately. And once again, we don't have a hard date, but our vendor has ran into supply chain issues with being able to get the pieces and parts. So I just wanted to put that on your radar that the audio visual technology won't be implemented until probably around the August timeframe. That's around the same timeframe that we're hoping that phase 2 will actually be completed as well. So know that I am meeting with staff next week and trying to determine, how we could use the boardroom prior to the final audiovisual installation being completed, so that the board could potentially begin resuming meeting in person. So we do have some ideas that we'll evaluate to see if they are feasible, and if so, we'll come back and report out to you. But anyway, we'll probably transition back to in-person meetings sometime over the month of April. And the dais still has to be completed, as well as a number of other items completed in that room before we can use it, just even as a basic meeting room. Next update for you, as you know, Teresa Farley is going into semi-retirement. We've been recruiting for her position. Just recently, we have offered the position to a gentleman by the name of Larry. His last name is Bogan. Larry will start with us on April 4th. Unfortunately, that's about 2 weeks behind schedule. We were hoping to have somebody on board by the middle of March so that they could train for about 2 weeks with Teresa. However, due to challenging recruiting as well as Larry's time frame for giving appropriate notice to his current employer, he will not be joining us until April 4th. So we'll be working with Teresa on how to go about still being able to achieve the necessary training for Larry. Also, as you're aware, Senator Merkley's staff has contacted us, and they have an interest in meeting with the board and staff. The staff members from Merkley's office will be here on March 29th. We have them for 1 hour, and so I've been working with staff to design what that 1 hour would look like. I did want to let the board know that instead of having the staff members meet with each individual board member 10 minutes apiece, that we are looking at having just a general meeting of the board and Merkley staff, as well as other key staff members from the county as well. So that would be a open public meeting that the board would be hosting from 11:30 till 12, just to have a dialogue with Merkley staff. They're really interested in coming to talk to us about our Emergency Operations Center. As you saw on the spreadsheet that Rick just presented, Senator Merkley's office was instrumental in being able to dedicate $1 million to our EOC. And so that is really the intent of their visit, is just to come in and talk about that project and check in on it. So to that point, we will have the Sheriff's Office staff, and Sheriff will be taking the second half of the meeting and doing a tour of the current EOC that's located in the law enforcement building. And so from a logistical perspective, I think we're going to have the entire meet and greet with Merkley staff at the law enforcement center, so they don't have to move from one building to the next, because like I said, we have a 1 hour time frame that they're able to dedicate meeting with us. So when you see the meeting invite come across, it will show the law enforcement building as where we'll be having the meeting, the first 30 minutes with the board and staff, and then the second 30 minutes will be the tour with the sheriff and Brian Lee, Sierra, and potentially others. We also plan to extend an invite to the press as well. We think that this is a valuable story for the press to be aware of and for them to listen in on any dialogue between the Senator's office and our staff and our Board of Commissioners. So that is the final update I have for you today.
All right, any comments or questions for Joe? Hearing none. All right, so we have up next our executive session, I believe. So we will take a 5-minute break and come back at 11:57. And after we go into executive session, we will come out of executive session and go back to item 3.3 and make a decision regarding the crisis center location. All right.
Commissioner Wise, I'm also communicating with the other staff members, so they'll be prepared to rejoin us after the executive session.
Thank you.
Okay, John, are we ready to proceed?
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, looks like we're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. And we are back rolling. So we're going to back up on the agenda and go to item 3.3, discussion regarding crisis center location. So before Pat, you had some hesitation and wanted some more information pending executive session. We've come out of that. Do you have thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah. So what are our options here? Seems like we've talked about a new building and downtown. Was there a third option?
Third option was the campus, having it with
Okay.
everything else on the campus.
Meaning the north side.
Correct. Which I will just say, my gut feeling was, yeah, let's put everything together. But after hearing from all of our knowledgeable staff, I'm convinced that downtown is a much better location. So I'm willing to support that. And I am willing to support a brand new building over a remodel.
I'd be happy to make a motion that we support new construction for the crisis center on downtown site. Do we need to be any more specific than that?
Commissioner, I think that gives
I would
staff.
suggest somewhere on the, I would suggest the downtown site be identified as the BOC/Lumen properties.
All right.
Okay.
Can we consider that a friendly amendment?
Certainly.
And I think, let's see, Joe, you started to say something. Did you have anything to add?
Actually, I was going to add, but I don't need to at this point, but I did see Paul raise his hand as well.
I was just going to check with him next. Paul, would you like to add anything?
No, actually, I was just going to say that committing to a confirmed site is going to help contracting dramatically start moving forward. So whatever that confirmed site is, that's all I'm really looking for facilities wise.
Okay.
As Nick was saying, we can move ahead right now with RFP, given the sites have pretty much the same dimensions and are mirror images of one another. So I'm hoping that that's sufficient, Paul, for you at this time.
I believe it will be. I'm just concerned that if we start design on a certain site and then the target moves once again, we will lose the money that we put into that design for that specific location as we move it to another location. So I just want to make sure that we're maximizing our dollars in design here is all.
Okay. Thank you. So I have a motion on the table. Do I hear a second?
Oh, second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Any other comments or questions on that agenda?
May I just say thank you, commissioners, for your work on this and your support of this project. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Danielle, and thank you to everyone else. We really appreciate all of the hard, coordinated work that you have done. You all make a great team, so thank you. That brings us to other. Is there any other for the good of the order? Hearing none, I will adjourn the meeting at 12:35 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.